Hey, just coming in for a quick video response. Anyway, uh, alright. So, what I think we really need to understand first is that, as you said, we all go through the language learning process differently. So, in order to start off this video response, I'm going to actually explain uh, my different approaches to learning languages. First of all, I have to state that I have a different purpose for each language I use. I don't see it as like, oh, I'm going to learn this and it's going to be the same as everything else. No, I'm learning Japanese. It's pretty much like my second language. That's pretty much just like my English. I have the same goals for my Japanese as I do for my English. Like, I want to be able to write books. I want to be able to read and respond intelligently and all that. Similar approach for Chinese. It's just I'm not really quite there yet. And for Chinese, it's more of a spiritual thing. It's more like, okay, it's something that is really humbling. So it's like because of all the there's so much history. It's just like, and it's also a lot of Japanese culture and modern thought came from China, because before there was a Japanese writing system, everyone used Chinese as the way to communicate intelligence. A lot like how in Europe they use Latin, so it was similar like that. Korean, it's more of a, and also Chinese, like Korean, it's more of a career choice, because I know that there's even in my area right now, there's a lot of Koreans, and as a career translator, I want to be able to, I don't want to limit myself. So I'm going to be working with a lot of people in the Chinese community, people in the Korean community, possibly some Japanese. But it's like that. Now, I'm learning Arabic for the Quran. It may evolve into something else later on, but right now that's the only real reason I have for learning Arabic. Plus, I'd like to be able to watch Al Jazeera, the Majset, I forgot already. The Arabic Al Jazeera and all stuff like that, because of my brother, he fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's just like all this stuff's going on that you'd have to be living under a rock to not know what's going on over there. So it's just, I want to be, also as a translator, I'm probably going to end up working with government people. So with all the stuff going on over there, there's going to be a lot of stuff like that. So now I don't really have any plans for other languages besides Vietnamese and maybe Laos. But what I pretty much learned through the process of learning what your goals are and where you want to take that language, then you can know at what point grammar is really good to do. For me, I usually pick up grammar almost at the beginning. Well, first of all, at the very beginning, what I'll do is I'll just go on the internet and search for some native level material. And if I can't find anything at all that I find appealing about the language, which usually I'll find something appealing within a couple seconds, because of the way it sounds, or because of the media that comes out of the country, or because of the music. Like with Korean, I started listening to Korean music, and I'm like, oh my god, this is awesome. And also not just the K-pop, but which is really fun and just really easy to listen to and to dance to. But traditional Korean music, it has a lot of similarities to traditional Japanese music. Like kind of like the opera style. I really like that kind of music, the traditional old-fashioned music. Yeah, I'm a little, maybe it's because I'm a Capricorn, but I'm a little old-fashioned. I feel like an old person sometimes. But once I've done that, usually I'll pick up an introduction book or a grammar book or something like that, or something about verbs. Verbs are usually my favorite to read about. But what it does for me personally, it may be different for everyone else and for you, but for me, when I read about grammar, it makes me excited about the language because then I'm like, whoa, this is a lot different than what I already know. So I can see, like, okay, this is what I can kind of see what I'm getting myself into. I may not understand it right away, but I'll at least know what to expect. And so when I actually, later on down the line, when I actually encounter those grammar rules, I'll be like, oh, now I get it. Now I should investigate it further. That's kind of the process that happens, is that you hear something that you've heard before, and then it makes a little bit more sense each time. And then, like you said, how every time you learn something new, you like to go out and use it on someone. That's all. That's pretty much the same idea, because then it gets it into out in the open space in between us as people, and then it just floats around, and then it in our brain it just it floats around and goes back in the circuits and all that. And pretty much you can, unless like me, you're really fascinated by grammar, and if you're someone who just wants to feel comfortable, you want to test the waters, I would say at least 500 hours of study, or I would even say 1,000 hours. But that's some people, if you were saying on another video about over 10 hours a day. I've done that before. With Chinese, I would literally sit down with a tape record, not a tape recorder, but with my MP3 player. I would listen to MP3 over and over and over. Specifically, I had Naruto and Bleach Chinese Mandarin dubs, and I turned them into MP3s from Tudo or Youku or whatever, and then I listened to them in kind of like an odd, it was kind of like making my own radio. It was like a radio drama. It made it was really fascinating, because then I really got to learn the different voices of the characters, and because I already know from the Japanese version the storylines a little bit for Bleach, but Naruto especially, and also the music. The music is key, because when you hear music, your brain locks in, because your brain understands music. At least I hope it does. At this point in your life. So it connects the dots, and what I'd say is that anyway, I would sit there and then also have my notebook open, so I would have my text. I'm for the really old fashioned approach, where you have a straight up text, an intellectual text, or a text in the language that you're learning, and you just read it with a dictionary on the side and a notebook, and you write down everything, like Latin style, uh, really old school. And that's just me though, but I really like that, because for me, I don't want to miss anything. I don't know enough yet to pick and choose. So I'm just going to write the whole thing down. Sometimes what I do for Chinese is, if I'm reading it and it's vertical, I'll write it, transcribe it into horizontal. and then later on I'll be able to take a dictionary and put on the readings that I don't, of the characters that I don't know, and write little notes about usage. If I, because usually I'll go to ChineseForums.com, and I'll put it in the description. It's a really good website, by the way, if you're learning Chinese. Very helpful community. Very helpful. I mean, you can just ask anything, and there's no stupid questions. I mean, most of the time they get there's a tattoo section. Those are about the most ignorant questions they get, because usually the questions that go there are like people who just post because they want to get a Chinese tattoo, and they don't know anything about Chinese. They think it looks cool, and so they ask about Chinese tattoos. That's about the lowest form of questions they get there, because they don't really stay. They just go and they ask, and then they expect an answer really quick. But the thing is that when you get a tattoo, it's really like, if you don't understand Chinese, then like it's really hard to understand what. So it's like it's kind of more of a dialogue rather than like a 1-2 answer. It's not, you can't really. I mean, that's why you gotta, when you go to the forums, don't expect answers right away, and also plan to be involved in the conversations, and you'll probably find that you'll have hours of time spent having conversations. But then this will all be in English, so it's like you'll be having these conversations, but then you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm improving my English right now. So there's different levels. It's like you don't just stop learning. Uh, See, for English, for me at this point, I don't really need to go back to grammar because I already have it kind of like in there because from high school, because I was the kid who got excited about grammar. But because I like understanding how it works, and then I like seeing it in practice. Because when you're writing, you don't really think about the grammar, but what happens is that you see it in usage, and then you're like, I see that point there. That's where they got that from. So it's like it's kind of this thing like there's natural language that comes out of us, but you also have to realize that we all study grammar because we need standardization, and that's the key. That's the key to the puzzle of language. Is there's natural language that just comes from human emotions, but then there's what we reinforce it with through standardization, because our whole life is based off of standardized language. We go to the we go to the shopping center, and we know what to ask the shopkeep, and it's like we have these standardized things that we do, and that like kind of that it re-influences how we think in the language because of the standardization. So they build off of each other. The standardization gets changed based on usage and naturalness, but the naturalness also gets changed because of the standardization. So it becomes this whole different thing. Now, I would say after 1,000 hours of study, as in for the first 100 hours at least, and throughout your entire language learning life, throughout your entire life, you're going to need to be listening to native level speech, as in find something that's really repetitive. I just found the Quran in Chinese, and that's the most repetitive thing I've ever. I mean, it's just like repeating Chinese over. Pretty much, it's the same. I really, I'm really fond of the Quran, and I like the themes, and I like the I like the niceness. I like the niceness of it, and so then I know that it's safe, and so just listen to something for the first 100 hours. You're going to just put on some headphones or put on some a radio talk show that has mostly just talking. Maybe sometimes they'll play some music, which is good too, because you need to hear the stuff that everybody knows from their childhood, like the oldies. Everyone knows the oldies, like we all know Elvis stuff, and like Johnny Cash, and like Ella Fitzgerald. Oh wait, I don't know, Madonna. But yeah, we all know this kind of stuff, and for that first 100 hours, and you can do it for as little as 20 minutes a day or as much as 10 hours a day. It's really up to you and how much you really want to learn it. For me, I pretty much have radio talk shows going on all day, and that's just me because I can't really. I'm having a lot of health problems right now, and it's just like I'm just the reason I'm so into language learning is well because I have a innate love and passion for it, but also because I needed to do something besides just stare at the wall. So I started listening to Japanese more, and I was like, oh, it's starting to make sense now. Input based learning, and so grammar is important because as an adult you already know syntax. Um, Syntax. I mean, not syntax. Context. You already know syntax from your first language. So you can acquire grammar a lot more efficiently than a child, because a child doesn't know syntax yet, but you do. You know syntax and context because you know the world around you, or so you think. That can be argued forever, but for the most part, we understand how the world works. At least on a very basic level. And so we have an adult understanding of concepts, and so we're actually better equipped than children to learn a language. We The only thing is that as adults we put fake hurdles in front of us. We always think that, like, oh, what if people laugh at me? What if I make a mistake? Kids don't do that. Kids just do it, and then if they make a mistake, they deal with it. And we can do that. That's actually there's no limitation, and as long as you commit to never giving up, you will succeed. Because really, what it all comes down to is not giving up, because everything else is just making it more efficient. But you could pretty much just have the only thing you have is a straight up dictionary that's like 20 years old and a notebook. And you're just reading out the dictionary and writing it down, writing it down, writing it down. And somehow, at some point, you come across a couple magazines or a book in the language. And then you're like, oh, I can use my dictionary pages, and then I can read it, and you're like, oh, that's how that word is used. And then you see it over and over and over again. And then you see it in different publications, in different books, in different magazines, and you hear people say it, and then it makes more sense. So grammar to me is just acquainting yourself with. It's almost like having a dinner party with the language. Like you read the introduction to a grammar book or a language textbook, and you read what that author has to say about it from their studies, and so you're intrigued by it as you're reading it. And then you learn about, okay, they're like, let me break it down, and then you're like, yeah. So that's really what it all comes down to. I would say that if you're not putting the hours of listening in, then you pretty much don't have a chance with grammar. You don't stay. You're entering the arena without any armor, without any weapons. You haven't been training. You're just like some random person that just enters the arena, and then a lion comes and gets you. You need to train. You need to study. You need to put in those hours. And I keep on saying that you need at least 1,000 hours of study before you can even attempt to be considered. Upper intermediate. And I don't even remember how many hours I've had Japanese, but I still only consider myself upper intermediate. And I have trouble I started talking to people on Skype and on IRC, Internet Relay Chat, on two channel, on Japanese, and it's a place for people who are Japanese who are learning English, and people who are non-Japanese who are learning Japanese, and kind of just hang out and talk in both languages. And it's kind of a wonderful thing, and it's a lot of good people in that channel, in that community, and there's new people that pop up all the time. So it's really and then people from that channel talk to me on Skype sometimes, and also I just have I always accept friend requests on Skype, so it's just I'm always open for talking, and it's just it's just who I am, and grammar is important if you want it to be. Bye bye.